The Espada. A group of soulless vessels, each one representing death itself. But what if I told you they weren't just chosen because they're strong? What if every Espada was carefully designed to represent a concept of death turned into a weapon? And here's the part that changes everything. Some of them aren't just dangerous because of their power. No, they're dangerous because of what they are. Today we'll be breaking down every Espada, their abilities, their true meaning, their resurrection, and why once you understand them, you'll realize something disturbing. Each Espada was never meant to fight, they were meant to represent death. Espada number 10. Let's start with the one everyone gets wrong. Yami Largo. On paper, he's the weakest Espada. Number 10, the lowest rank. But that's where the description begins, because Yami's power doesn't follow the normal rules while most Espadas are ranked based on spiritual pressure. Yami's strength is tied to something more far dangerous, his rage. The more angrier he becomes, the stronger he grows, and that's just a buff. The limitless escalation. Now, here's the what the fuck moment. When Yami releases his resurrection, he doesn't just transform, he breaks his own rank. His real name is Ira, meaning wrath, and in that form, Yami doesn't stay number 10. His true rank is 0. The strongest Espada, let that sink in. The weakest is actually the strongest. So why would Aizen hide that? Why disguise the strongest as the weakest? Because Yami isn't just a fighter, he is a trigger, a walking catastrophe that only gets stronger the longer he exists. And here's the real question. If Yami represents rage, then what happens when that rage is allowed to reach its absolute peak? Now we move on to something even more disturbing. Espada number 9. Arengero Araruri. Arengero is an embodiment of something far worse than rage. He represents consumption. His ability allows him to devour hollows, absorb their abilities, their memories, even their identity. Meaning he doesn't just fight with his power, he fights with stolen experience. And here's where the things get darker. Arengero doesn't even have a true body. His form is fusion of countless beings, a living graveyard of souls hidden inside a single being. His resurrection allows him to reveal his true grotesque form, and it's not just terrifying, it's unnatural. But here's the question that should hit you. If Arengero can consume anything and become stronger than others, then how do you even define what that is? Because the moment he absorbs something, he stopped being himself. Which means Arengero doesn't just represent consumption, he represents the loss of identity itself. And that raises a terrifying question. What happens when something like that becomes powerful enough to consume everything? Now we're entering pure intellect. Espada number 8. Salaforo Grant, the scientist of the Espada. But calling him a scientist is almost too simple. Salaforo represents something far more dangerous. Perfection through control. He doesn't fight directly. He studies his opponents, analyzes them, and manipulates the battle itself. His resurrection allows him to fully embrace his experiment and exciting nature, turning the battlefield into a laboratory. And here's the what the fuck moment. Salafolo doesn't just kill his enemies, he turns them into data. Every injury, every reaction, every moment becomes something he can use. Meaning fighting him once guarantees you lose the second time because he already knows you. And that leads to the terrifying realization, if he ever reaches true perfection, there would be no way to beat him ever again. So the question becomes, how do you defeat someone who has already learned how to beat you? Now we're entering into something far more unsettling. Espada number 7. Zamari Rurho. Zamari represents something far more than most fighters can even comprehend. Absolute control. His power isn't about destroying you, it's about taking control of your body. Through his abilities, he can mark a target, and once that mark is placed, your body is no longer yours. He controls your movements, your actions, your life. And here's the what the fuck moment. Zamari doesn't even see himself as evil. To him, control is the highest form of love, meaning domination is not cruelty to him, it's a purpose. His resurrection unleashes even greater control, pushing his abilities into full dominance over anything he marks. But here's the terrifying truth. If Zamari ever succeeded completely, then free will would no longer exist. Even every action, every moment, every thought, just him controlling you. And that raises the question, what's more dangerous, death or losing control of yourself entirely? Now we hit one of the most iconic Espadas in Bleach. So all the fangirls stand up. Espada number 6. Grimmjow Jaggerjack. Grimmjow isn't just a fighter, he's a predator. His entire existence revolves around one thing, being the strongest unlike the others. Grimmjow doesn't hide behind intellect, doesn't rely on control. He embraces chaos. His ability reflects that perfectly. His claws, his speed, his instinct, everything about him is built for combat. His resurrection transformed him into a fully realized predator, pushing his destructive potential even further. But here's the what the fuck moment. Grimmjow doesn't fight for Aizen, not really. He fights because he wants to. That makes him dangerous in a completely different way. While others serve a purpose, Grimmjow is driven by his own free will, which means if ever turned against you, he wouldn't hesitate. There will be no strategy, no mercy, just pure instinct hunting you down. And that leads to the real question, if Grimmjow ever reached his peak, would Aizen even be able to control him? Now we're getting into something deeper. Espada number 5. Noritora Gilga. Noritora represents something most people never understand a day in our life. It's insecurity turned into hatred. His entire existence is driven by one goal, to prove he is the strongest, not because he is, but because he believes he deserves to be. And here's where it gets dark. His hatred isn't just for others, it's for himself. His resurrection amplifies his monstrous form, giving him unwhelming durability and combat potential. If it doesn't fix what's inside, it only makes it worse. The more he fights, the more he hates, the more he pushes forward. And here's the what the fuck moment. Noritora is obsessed with fighting women because he sees strength as something he was denied. The obsession defines his entire character and it leads to something terrifying. What happens when someone fueled by pure hatred finally reaches the level they're always wanted? Do they become a whole, or do they become even more broken? Now we'll reach one of the most dangerous Espada. Espada number 4. Ulquiorra Cypher. Ulquiorra isn't just like the others. He doesn't act on rage, doesn't act on pride. He doesn't even understand emotion the same way humans do. To him, feelings are irrelevant. What matters is logic. His ability reflects the cold nature, his resurrection, Murcielago, a form that strips away restraint, revealing his true power. But here's the what the fuck moment. Ulquiorra has something no other Espada has, a second form, Segunda Etapa, which is pretty much second form in Spanish, but that's besides the point. A transformation so secret even most Espada don't know it exists. And in that form, Ulquiorra becomes something completely different, faster, stronger, more overwhelming, but also more empty. Because that's the truth about Ulquiorra. He represents nihilism. The belief that nothing matters, no purpose, no meaning, no value in life. But then something happens. He encounters someone who changes that belief. And that's where everything changes, because for that first time, Ulquiorra begins to question what it means to have a heart. And here's the question that shakes everyone. If someone who believes in nothing starts to feel something, does that mean he was wrong the entire time? Now we move to strength, control, and leadership. Espada number 3. Tir Haribel. Haribel represents something completely different from the others. She represents protection. Unlike many Espada, she doesn't seek destruction for its own sake. She fights to protect. Her strength is calm, controlled, calculated. Her resurrection unleashes her full Arctic power, turning her into a force of nature. But here's the what the fuck moment. Halle Bell was not always an Espada, and her story is deeply connected to someone else, Neliel de Oreshran. Before she became number 3, Halle Bell was part of a group of female Arancars led by Nell. Nell was once a Espada herself, known as the former number 3, and unlike most Espada, Nell represents something rare, compassion. She believed in fighting for others, not dominance, but here's where things get tragic. Nell was betrayed, stripped of her power, and reduced to a childlike state, a shadow of once she was. And yet, even in that state, Nell never lost her kindness, which raises a powerful question. What does it mean to be strong if the strongest thing about you is your heart? And Halle Bell carried that same energy forward because she doesn't fight to destroy, she fights to preserve. And that makes her one of the most dangerous Espada of them all, because she's not driven by ego, but by purpose. And that leads to the final question: can something built on protection stand against something built on pure destruction? Now we reach something far beyond strength. Espada number 2. Beregan Luis and Beren. Beregan doesn't represent power, he represents something far more terrifying: time itself. Before becoming an Espada, Beregan was a king, a being who ruled over Jureco Mundo, believing himself to be the ultimate authority, but then something happened. Something stronger than him, and that something was time. His ability allows him to aid anything he touches, objects, flesh, even abilities. All decay under his power. His resurrection unleashes his true form as a living embodiment of death. His released name, Arrogante, meaning arrogance. And here's the what the fuck moment. Beregan isn't just aging things, he is the inevitability of death itself. Everything that exists eventually decays. Everything that lives eventually has an end. And Beregan is that process, giving a form. But here's the terrifying truth: even Beregan can't escape time, because time is something no one controls, not even a king. And that raises the ultimate question: if death itself can't be represented, then what happens when something finally surpasses it? And now we reach the strongest Espada. Espada number 1. Coyote Stark. Stark is different from everyone else because his power was born out of loneliness. While others become strong enough through ambition, Stark became strong because he was alone. His spiritual pressure was so immense, it caused weaker beings around him to die, literally. So what does he do? He splits himself into 2, creating a second being so he would never feel alone again. His resurrection unleashes 2 guns and allows him to fight alongside him and his other self. But here's the what the fuck moment. Stark doesn't even want to fight. He hates how strong he is because his strength isolates him from everyone else, meaning the strongest Espada is also the most lonely. And that changes everything because it means power doesn't always come with a purpose. Sometimes it comes with emptiness, and Stark embodies that perfectly. So when he fights, it isn't for glory, it's not for dominance, it's just something he has to do. And that raises one final question: if the strongest being is also the loneliest, then what does that strength even mean if it costs you everything? The Espada weren't just villains, they weren't just soldiers, they were representations of something deeper: rage, consumption, control, instinct, insecurity, emptiness, death, and loneliness. And at the center of it all was Sosuke Aizen, the one who created them not just as weapons but as concepts. Because Aizen didn't just want power, he wanted to understand and surpass the very idea of existence itself, and the Espada was the closest thing to that vision made real. So when you look back at them, they aren't just ranked 1 through 10, they're ranked by how much of death they embody. And that leads to the final truth: the Espada were never just about strength. They were about understanding what it means to exist in a world where everything eventually dies. And once you understand that, you realize something terrifying. The real question was never who is the strongest.